Hi everyone and welcome back to my top 500 games. We are currently at number 360, and do you remember in the last part where I was talking about Heavy Rain and how when it comes to these purely story-based games I don't know how to talk about them effectively, and I went on that big rant about how I'm judging them and stuff, and well, basically, yeah, the same is true again here, because number 360 is The Wolf Among Us, which is a Telltale game. It's one of those 5-episode Telltale games. And again, I really don't know what to say about this, because it is a purely story-based game. There really isn't any particular mechanics or anything like that that I can talk about. So yeah, I really struggle of knowing how to talk about these types of games. I suppose I could say, give some sort of brief synopsis of what the story is about. Not that I particularly want to, but basically the main character is a werewolf called Bigby, or rather the Big Bad Wolf, that's where his name comes from. And he's like a detective, and they live in a world whereby the fairy tales have come to life, and it's his job to track down on strange goings on. And there's this whole thing about the fairy tale creatures needing to buy glamours so that they can blend in with regular humans. I really don't have much to say about it, so I'm not going to continue talking about it. I will just stop talking about it right there and move on to the next game. Number 359 is Nightmare Creatures. This is a game I had a demo of on the PS1. I don't actually remember which demo exactly it was or what else it came with, but I do remember that of all the demos that I had, this is probably one of the ones that I had played the most, because this game is kind of like an action-adventure-y sort of game, I suppose. Now, I don't do horror generally. I'm not intrigued by things that are terrifying. I don't find that enticing. I don't like being scared. I don't do that sort of stuff. But I was kind of into Nightmare Creatures, and it was quite spooky, because at the start you can instantly hear these zombie groans, and there are moments where there's these werewolf type creatures. I don't know what they're meant to be, but they sort of jump out of doorways and smash through walls and all that sort of stuff. And you have a sort of like a staff that you can go around and smack the enemies with. That is if you're playing as the male character. And you also have a gun, and you can go around and you can find hidden areas with different types of weapons and weird magic power-ups and stuff. And I do like the whole sort of action-adventure puzzly layout that the game has. It's something that I find very appealing. The whole looking for switches and then having the door open and trying to find the door. Obviously not that very specifically, because that's just really simple, but that whole sort of making a puzzle out of the environment, something I'm very much a fan of. And I also was able to find that at the end of the level that you could sort of escape from the main area, because on the ledge that led to the boundary of the level, the fence, or like this weird barrier type of thing, probably a fence, it wasn't across the whole way, so you could kind of sneak around, and there were some extra bonuses there. It was interesting. I liked that, and I did enjoy the limited amount of this game that I did play. Next up, we have a little clump, once again, because number 358 is Trine 2, and 357 is Trine. Both of these games are very similar, so there really isn't much to talk about overall to differentiate between the two, really. But there is quite a few things to talk about when it comes to the raw, pure mechanics of the game, because it does stuff that you don't often see in too many games. The game is sort of like a 2D platformer, apart from you have 3 characters that you can switch between. You have the archer, the wizard, and the knight. And the idea is that they each have their own individual abilities. So for example, the archer can shoot arrows, and they can also use a rope to swing across wooden platforms, and the wizard can create blocks by drawing the squares in the air, and it will create a sort of box for you to use as a platform. And the knight can also bash through objects and is the powerful attacking one of the group. You can level up these characters by killing enemies, which will give you experience, and you can also find items that will increase your experience. So it was sort of like a collecting thing and a grinding thing in a way, and you could use these to build up the different skills of your characters, such as with the archer extending the amount of arrows that you can shoot at one time, or increasing the amount of blocks that the wizard can make. And there's skill trees to go with these characters as well. See, this game is, or rather these games are rather puzzly in their approach, but sometimes it kind of feels that there isn't much you can do except for the fact that it's more to do with implementing the solution rather than solving the solution, because sometimes it feels as though you can't really figure out what it is that you're meant to do, and once you've sort of come up with an idea and you try to run with it, you kind of get this feeling that you're not entirely sure whether that was what you were meant to do. Like, for example, I have had times whereby I've created a block with the wizard, and the idea is that you're not supposed to be able to move a block that you're stood on. So usually you can hover blocks in the air with the wizard, but if you're stood on it, then you can't. But you can create a block on top of the block, step on the top block, and then use the magic thing to move the bottom block along to sort of travel through the air. Of course, the downside to this is that you have to sort of balance yourself, and the game does have these weird wonky physics. Both of these games have these weird wonky physics, but in cases like that, it kind of feels like you've cheated the system and you're not entirely sure whether you did what you were meant to do. But good games nonetheless. Number 356 is Age of Zombies. I actually played the PS Minis version of this, even though there are other versions of it available now. But this is a game by Heartbreak Studios, so this is where they use the character Barry. I think this may be where Barry originates, I'm not entirely sure, but it's a twin stick shooter, and it's got quite a cartoony style to it as well. So you're basically running around this arena, and all these zombies are trying to come towards you, and you run around and shoot at them and kill them. And the cartoony style that it has it gives it a very strong feel of, I don't want to sound generic here, because I know this sounds generic, sort of like this level of satisfaction that it really feels like things have an impact, and such as, for example, you can collect a weapon and you can see an explosion, and you can see the explosion and it really feels like it had an impact to it. I realize that trying to describe this, I'm using very wishy-washy language, and I don't want to be one of those people who use terms like, oh, it has a certain charm to it, or, oh, it really feels like you're actually in control. You know, wishy-washy language like that. I don't like using that, but I can't think of a better way to describe what I'm trying to describe here. Number 355 is an extremely simple game that I played on an iPad called Piano Tiles. Now, Piano Tiles, the way that this game works is that you have several different modes, but they all revolve around having different quadrants of the screen, not corners of the screen, rather 4 different segments at the bottom of the screen, and these notes will sort of drop down. If you imagine sort of like a Guitar Hero type style or something like that, where the notes will fall and you basically have to tap on the screen. But what I really like about this game is, yes, it's very simple, and yes, there really isn't much to say about it, but what I do really like about it is just the way that you sort of go into this sort of zen mode when you play this game. You will just be tapping away at the screen and you won't be thinking about what you're doing. And then the moment that you stop to think about what it is you're doing and you're thinking about the tiles dropping, that's when you lose. It's a very strange thing to describe, but it's sort of like the more aware of it that you become, you start to hesitate a bit, and it's one of those games where you just have to play it on your instincts. It's very hard to describe, but I think it's a feeling that many people will understand. And there are different modes, such as the one that just keeps on dropping notes and you score points. There's a mode whereby it goes as fast as you tap it, so you have to move it manually as you go through, things like that. Not much to say, but still interesting and fun to play. Number 354 is Doritos Crash Course. This is a game on the Xbox 360, and I believe this game was free. I don't fully remember, but I believe it was free, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was free because it's Doritos based, so you know that Microsoft Doritos Mountain Dew sort of stuff. It's probably to do with all that lot. It'll be a sponsorship thing, so yeah, it's a Doritos type game. Apart from it's not really got anything to do with Doritos. It's just a game with Doritos in the name, so kind of like a Doritos. I don't know. The game has nothing to do with Doritos. Is it just the company that made it? It's just a cross promotion thing. But forget Doritos. It's got nothing to do with Doritos. But basically, you control your Xbox avatar character, and you're sort of running through this obstacle course, racing against other people. And it's really intricate at times with the way that you've got to make sure that you press the button at the right time and make sure that you do things just right. It's one of those very, very heavy score-based games, if you know what I mean. Number 353 is a game called Azada, or is it called Azada or Azada? I don't know. I don't know how you pronounce this game, but this is quite an anomaly because I kind of got this game sort of towards the end of the late 2000s, so it might have been 2010, it may have been 2009, around that time, and I sort of got into this phase of just getting some PC games, just buying a few PC games. I don't know why that came into my head, but I did, and this is one of them. And this is one of those games that is sort of, you know, the type of game that you get in supermarkets where it's obviously aimed at like 50-year-old women who like hidden object games and that sort of stuff, and it's all like the mystery of so and so so and so, and you've got to solve the puzzle by clicking on the things, and you know the type of game I'm talking about. But I didn't know that at the time, and I'm not 50 yet, so who knows what I'll be into when I'm 50. Hopefully I won't be into those types of hidden object games. But then again, if I enjoy them when I'm 50, then why is it an issue? I don't know what the complaint is there. But whatever. This game is kind of like one of those, apart from it has a bigger series of events that you can do rather than just find the hidden object, which it does have some of those, and I believe that those parts of this game are the worst. But a lot of it is just basic puzzles. So you'll have things like, you know that squares game where you've got to like put matchsticks down, or you've got to like draw lines, and then whenever you get a square you can draw another line and you've got to score more points. It has like one of those. And then it has that game whereby, I don't know the name of it, where you've got like a tower and each piece of the tower it's sort of like a pyramid shape. You're not allowed to put the blocks that are smaller underneath the ones that are bigger, so you have to sort of maneuver them in such a way that you can move the tower from one place to another. It had those types of things, and it did have some really, really silly things, such as you will click on like a matchstick and it will reveal like a number. It will say like 171, and then it'll bring up this calculator, and then you have to press in 171. Things that just make you do things that aren't really any sort of gameplay to it. But there is a reason why this game is at number 353, and something that actually I really did like about this game, and that thing is that the game itself isn't just a series of these small challenges. Completing the series of challenges itself becomes its own challenge, because the game, the proper full, I don't want to say arcade mode, that sounds stupid, or story mode even, but that type of, you know, what would be called the main campaign, as what people would call it, but you know what I mean. It actually had a time limit on it, so you had a time limit to complete the game, and if you didn't beat in the time limit, you lost the game and had to start again. And it wasn't like you could just memorize all the answers. Obviously, some of them you could, but not all of them. And you also had like these little stones that you could use and you could accumulate by completing levels. And if you use the stones, it would allow you to skip a level. So there's that sort of tension of, I don't want to use one of my magic stone things. I want to be able to keep it for a later level. And what happened with me is that I kept those stones. I kept them quite a while, feeling quite confident about myself. And then when I got to like the last few chapters, suddenly I ended up using like loads of them. I don't know, I really like that aspect of it. I really like it when they take something that's something so simple, something like, you know, just solving a brick puzzle, and then they sort of expand it into this greater thing where you have a series of puzzles and you have to sort of connect them in such a way you have to think about, like efficiency, there's questions of efficiency, like how good am I at these types of things, how will I use my resources. I really like that. So that's what really attracted me about that game. Number 352 is The Legend of Zelda, the original Legend of Zelda. Now, I didn't have this on the original Nintendo because I never had an original Nintendo. The first time that I played this game was on the Game Boy Advance, the Game Boy Advance version, because I got the NES-themed Game Boy Advance SP, and you got to choose a Game Boy Advance NES-themed game to go with it. So I chose The Legend of Zelda. So it was actually a Game Boy Advance port of this game that I had played. Now, The Legend of Zelda, the original Legend of Zelda, is a classic. There's a certain set of people who just love this game, and again, like with Super Mario Brothers, if you've got the nostalgia for it, you're going to have that nostalgic quality to it, of course. Also, it means that you'll have a different sort of mindset, a different sort of frame of reference to the game. But when I played this game, I did have that sort of I don't know where I'm going feeling. But even still, even with the sort of cryptic messages that you never would understand, I still did enjoy the game to an extent. And I did enjoy going around and trying to find the different caves and different areas around this world. Now, the thing that I did like about this game, which may seem like such a minor thing now, but I really liked how having your health full meant that you could do the long range attack, and then being hit meant that it went down to the short range attack. That might sound silly, but I really do like that sort of variable punishment type of deal, whereby if you can go a long time without being hit, you will keep this power, you will maintain this power for a longer amount of time. And we don't really get games that do this nowadays, because nowadays everything's long term, everything's continuous, which, don't get me wrong, I love long term things. Like, you know how much I love leveling up and RPGs and that sort of stuff and all that, so I can't really complain there. But just this idea that you can keep something powerful, but you have to sort of really protect it, and your ability to protect it is the power itself. I might be rambling, but I know what I'm talking about. It's something that I found really nice, and it's something that I would like to see come back in some games, actually. But to be honest, I didn't get far enough to the point where I was just like not having a clue what to do as far as I could remember. I may have done a couple of dungeons. I don't remember all that much. Number 351 is Sonic Rush Adventure. This is a Sonic game on the DS, which I had, and for a Sonic game, the main 2D platforming parts were alright. They were, as I expect a 2D Sonic platform game to be, especially of the more modern ones. The more modern ones tend to be more focused on pure speed, as opposed to the platforming bits with speedy segments to them. But the reason why I don't rate this higher is because it seems so bogged down by weird mini-games and pointless story bits and stuff. And I know I said that I don't really like to complain about story, but I am here, I suppose, even though it wasn't that much of a big deal. But I just felt there were some extra padding bits that I didn't really feel worked all that well. I don't know, I didn't feel those bits, but the game overall was okay. So that's it. I am going to end this part here. I will see you in the next part. We'll continue on from 350. I'll see you then. Bye.